Degrees? Check. Professional network? Check. Money? Integrity? Hello, my name is Sean Shokunbi, and I am the creator of the Leading Like a Lady series. Welcome so much to this program. This is going to be an 8-week program leading you to define what does leadership really look like objectively and for you, and then what are the tools, resources, and community that you need available in order to make your leadership goals come true. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel to make sure you get the notifications every time a new video is up. Also, make sure you used our sign-up sheet on our website, which will be shown below, in order to get the emails as well with any updated materials that you need and resources that you need to follow along with this program. All right, so let's get into the video. Before I go into the discussion about, what this 8 weeks is all about and how I'm planning to assist you in meeting your goals, I want to tell you a little bit more about my backstory and why I feel like this is essential, especially in the time that we're in right now. We're in the 21st century. If you're watching this, hello in the future. But we're in the 21st century right now, and we are in a pivotal moment, I think, in the world, in that the leading democracy on the planet, which is thought to be the United States of America, that's thought to be the pinnacle of democracy, has just elected its first woman vice president. And it just so happens that the first woman vice president also happens to be a Black woman. So we're seeing someone in the number 2 spot for being the leader of the so-called free world, being someone who essentially looks like me. The significance of that is definitely not lost, and it's a monumental thing that we should definitely celebrate. And when I think about this woman being in the position where she is and how she got there, and just watching the things that she went through in order to get to that spot, I see a lot of things that I've been through in my own personal life. With all of that being said, the confidence to be the leader that I probably was destined to be in those areas was not always visible. I wasn't always able to articulate confidently why I felt I belonged in those rooms, and wasn't always able to stand my ground when I was questioned for why I was in those rooms. And I see that happen too often, of course, with women who look like us. And I'm specifically talking right now to women of the African diaspora. We do know that there's a situation where women who are just not white, women who are of color, often deal with these barriers to entry, number one, and then also a lot of hurdles to jump over once they break through those barriers. But I'm specifically talking about women of the African diaspora because I also believe that our culture plays a huge role in this. In many of our cultures, whether we like it or not, it's true. Our cultures dictate that women play more of a behind-the-scenes role, or even if they play any role at all, it's more of like a domesticated, docile role. And for a lot of us, that makes it very difficult to speak up or to even find our voice. Who am I? That question would always come up in my mind, and a lot of times, or for many years, I didn't fully have an accurate answer, or an answer that I was satisfied with. And so let's get into it. Today's session is called Position versus Power. And I'm starting with that because the first question for this series is, how do we define leadership? What does it actually mean? Depending, again, on culture, where you're at, but I think it's something that's kind of ubiquitous or pretty well known, and everybody feels this way around the world because of globalization. So what I mean by that is we have access to so many different points of views and ideas due to access to the internet, access to social media, and even with all of that diversity of thought, there are certain principles of thought that take priority over others just because of their influence and their power behind it. Predominantly white spaces, right? Those are usually the ones that give us the definitions of anything that happens in the world, in particular, what it means to be in power or in leadership. I took these two words, position versus power, from an amazing TED Talk. I strongly encourage you to watch it. Stacey Abrams, a woman of color, Black woman, who ran for governor of a state in the United States called Georgia, lost her race to a Republican white man who is also very well known to have severe racist and misogynistic tendencies, but we won't go into that right now. So she had a very unique experience in terms of fighting a lot of these ideological battles, these ideas of, again, what does it mean to be a leader and how does she fit into that definition. And in the TED Talk that she gave, she said this specific quote. She said, "Sometimes fatigue means that we accept position instead of power." And I'll just read that one more time. Sometimes fatigue means that we accept position instead of power. The reason why that stood out to me so poignantly is because I felt a lot of times that because I didn't want to sacrifice power, I often let go of positions that could have, technically speaking, helped me rise the ranks to, quote unquote, what certain people define as leadership. I want to make sure that in this video you don't think, and this is something we should just set the tone for how we'll have conversations moving forward in this series. When I bring up examples of women leaders, I want us to bring a critical eye to examining who they are. I don't want us to put to the side the fact that this is a person who is probably a trailblazer in their area and definitely should be honored and celebrated and receive all the accolades that are well deserved for whatever position they were able to obtain. But also want us to remember that we're humans, right? So in this Leading Like a Lady series, I named it that because it's kind of also a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing, because oftentimes we hear the word lady, and again, we have a certain connotation of women's place, where they belong and where they should stay. But if we take a critical look into the leaders who have come before us, meaning women leaders, right? We can see attributes that are just attributes that any person should have as a leader, right? And oftentimes women have to adopt these traits as a survival mechanism, but then at the same time, going to Stacey Abrams' quote about positions versus power, a lot of times we feel like those are things that we can actually, or we feel forced to relinquish in order to get ahead. There's been a lot of controversy about Kamala Harris, as monumental as her win was, as being on the ticket of a winning candidate for president. It was very historic, and it's going to change the way young girls think about what they can become for years to come. But it might get in the way of real progress if there's not a strong self-interrogation on her part and also on our part about what did it take to get there. And the reason why Kamala Harris has been so controversial for some people is that her track record hasn't always been on the side of the oppressed. Which brings me to another, I know we're jumping around a little bit, so bear with me. But Stacey Abrams' quotes in her TED Talk just weave effortlessly into this conversation that I wanted to have, which we're going to get to in a second, about her significance in all of this in terms of just understanding women in leadership. But she mentioned that as leaders, we also have to be people of good conscience on the behalf of the oppressed. So again, we have to be people of good conscience on the behalf of the oppressed or oppressed people. And unfortunately, Kamala Harris has had a track record where some people would argue that she was not always on the side of the oppressed. And so what is patriarchy? Do you know what the word means? Well, I'll put the definition up on the screen, but